Events are a very important part of JavaScript. Every button press, text input, drag and drop, etc. requires an event call to perform an action. And we have to be very careful on where and when we are putting these events in our code, because that can sometimes prove to be a hassle for us, since these events may not always perform like they are supposed to. For example, triggering an event which maybe was added to its parent. And that is when we start cursing JavaScript for its weird behavior. And one of those behaviors is called event propagation. So that's why I'm gonna discuss the concept of event propagation in this video and all the interview questions that are asked on it in our front-end interviews. Okay, so I've opened VS Code here with simple HTML, CSS and JavaScript files. And so the first question is, what is event propagation? So if I go to HTML file and I'm gonna create a div over here. I'm gonna say div. Inside of this, I'm gonna have a form, and inside of this, I'm gonna have a button, which is gonna say button. And I'm gonna have some basic styles over here. I'm just gonna quickly bring them in, just like that. Okay, let me run this by open with live server. Okay, so here you see we have our div, our form and a button. Now what's gonna happen if we put events on all of these three? If I put an event listener on button, if I put an event listener on form, if I put an event listener on div, and then I go on to click on this button. Now I'm clicking on this button, right? But this button exists inside of this form and this form exists inside of this div. So obviously I'm clicking on this form and this div as well, right? So the events on both of those as well be executed. Now this brings us a lot of questions, like in which sequence are these events going to be executed? Are these going to be executed like this, like first button, form and div, or they're going to be executed like div, form and button, or in a random way? And even if they execute in a certain way, can we change the sequence of this execution? So this complete process of deciding when and in which direction the event will be executed is called event propagation. Now, event propagation is not a small concept. It has a lot of things inside of it. Let us go on and discuss them one by one. So another one of these questions can be, what is event bubbling? Now, as you might have guessed with the name bubbling, so bubbles always go from down to up, right? So that is exactly how bubbling works as well. In bubbling, the events are executed from bottom up, which means button, form and div. And this is the default behavior when we are in a situation like this. So let me show you. If I select all of these three elements from our HTML, just like that, and we put event listener on all of these. So div.add event listener, click event, and I'm gonna add a function on it, an anonymous function. Inside of this, I'm just gonna say alert. And since this is a div, I'm just gonna say div. And similarly, I'm gonna add two more event listener over here. Cool. Now let's see. So if I click on this button, you're gonna see we have this button alert, but then we have a form alert, and then we have a div alert as well. So did you notice something? The events were fired from bottom up, and this exact process is called event bubbling. Now there's also a way when events are triggered from top to bottom, which we're going to discuss as we go along in this video. But this exact process is called event bubbling. So now if I click on form, you're going to see form is inside of the div, right? But form is at the very bottom, at the very inside of this whole HTML. So it's going to first trigger the form and then it's going to trigger the div. And obviously we didn't click on the button, so button won't be triggered over here. And if you click on div, it's just going to be div. Cool. So this is what an event bubbling is. Now there are few events that do not bubble, like focus and blur, etc. You can Google about them, but this can also be a follow-up question that name few events that do not bubble. Now you must be also thinking that is there any way to stop this bubbling? I mean, I just want to click on this button, right? I don't want these form and div to be executed, right? So yes, there is a way, and again we are going to discuss all of these things as we go along in this video. Now the other question that the interviewer may ask us is the difference between event.target, this.target versus event.currentTarget. And all of these are very important to know if you want to tackle event propagation. So let's discuss them one by one. So we already have these event listener. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to take it and I'm going to create a common function for all of these. I'm going to call this function func. And I'm just going to provide it to all of these over here. And now inside of this, first of all, let's see what the current target is. Also, I'm going to need an event over here. So let's see what is this current target. So I'm gonna just print the tag name, which means that I'm gonna get the tag on which this was executed. So if I click on this button over here, you're gonna see we get the current target as button. Okay, that's fine. That makes sense because we have clicked on button. Let's see the next. Okay, it gives us form because the event is being bubbled up. Fine. And then it's gonna give us div. Okay, that's fine. That makes sense. So this event.currentTarget bubbles. That's fine. Let's add event.target. So now I'm gonna alert this target as well. Just the event.target, not the current target, right? So what does this give us? Now if I click on this, the target is button. Okay, that's fine. If I click on this again, so we again get target as button. And if I click again, and in the third bubble event call as well, we get target as button. So you see over here, this event.target is only aiming towards this button because this is where the origin of our bubbling is. So this can be very helpful for us if we are trying to create an app or something so that we don't get lost with this bubbling. And the third thing is this.tag name. So this, as you may have already guessed, only points to the function that it is being called on, and currently it's going to be called on div and then button and then form on whichever order it's called. First button, then form, and then div. So I'm guessing that this will work exactly as event.currentTarget. So if I click on button, okay, we get button, then form, then div. So now you know all of these basic terminologies and you can easily answer this question if the interviewer asks you this. Now the next question is, what is event capturing or trickling? Now you may remember that I mentioned that by default the event bubbling is the process that happens, but there's another process called event capturing which makes events execute from top to bottom. So if I click on this button, it's gonna execute first div, then form event, then button event. So how do we achieve that? When we are adding a particular event listener on an element, what we are supposed to do is we're just supposed to say comma, curly braces, and we're supposed to say capture to be true. Now you're gonna notice if I click on button, it's gonna first execute the div, then button, and then form. This is weird. Why did this happen? It's because this complete div executed the capturing process, but the form and button still had the default bubbling process inside of it. So how do we tackle this? We're supposed to add this in the event listeners of our form and button as well. So now you're gonna notice it's gonna perform capturing for all of these three. Capturing, or sometimes also known as trickling. So now if I'm gonna go and click on button over here, you're gonna say div, form, and then the button. Awesome. And trust me, this is also one of the most asked interview questions in JavaScript junior as well as senior interviews. Now here comes another follow-up question from the interviewer. How do you stop bubbling or capturing? We should only be supposed to click on this button if we are clicking on this button, right? So the way to do that is called stop propagation. So inside of this function over here, I'm just gonna take an event first. Let me remove this capturing for all of these for now. I'm just gonna go with bubbling currently. And I'm gonna add an event over here for all of these. And before this event, I'm just gonna say e.stop propagation for all of these. So if let's say we click on this button, you're gonna see we just get the button and nothing else. But what if we wanted to trigger button as well as form and then stop the propagation? So we're not gonna add it to this button over here, and I'm gonna say stop the propagation when you reach this form. I'm gonna remove this from div as well. So if I click on button, you're gonna see button, then form, and that's it. Now similarly, this can be done in the capturing process as well. We just need to use this stop propagation.
Alright, pause. If you're not yet following me on Twitter, go to twitter.com/Piyush_Eon or click the link in the description down below and hit that follow button right now. I'm waiting for you. I'm still waiting. Okay, fine. Let's continue with the video.
Now the next question is, what is event delegation? And trust me, this is the most question. Among all of these questions, this one is the most asked question in our JavaScript interviews. And you may have seen me implement this event delegation in our previous videos as well. So let's discuss what this actually is. So I'm gonna quickly open my HTML, and what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just add a div over here with the class products, and I'm gonna add all of these products inside of it. And I'm going to quickly add some CSS as well. And I'm not going to explain the CSS because This is not about CSS, right? This is about JavaScript. This is just some basic CSS styling. So here we go. We have this UI over here with all of this product. We can consider this as our e-commerce site with all of these products. Cool. Now, if you're supposed to click on this mobile over here, then this should perform some event, right? Obviously. And this headphone, laptop, and all of these individual products are going to perform an event. But are we supposed to add the individual event listener on all of these? No, obviously not, right? Because that will burden our complete page with so many event listener. Imagine there's the unlimited list of these products, then our page will also have the unlimited event listener running at the same time. So what do we do? So this is where the event delegation comes in. So event delegation is where we add event listeners to the parent element instead of adding them to the descendant elements. So we're gonna just add the event listener to our parent, which is our div, which is this over here. So we're gonna add the event listener to this, and then we're gonna check whenever we click on any of these, we're gonna check if we click on mobile. So just route to the mobile page. If this is a headphone, then route to the headphone page. So let me just show you quickly. If I go to script.js, I'm gonna say document.querySelector, and I'm gonna target the products div, this one, and I'm gonna add an event listener to it, which is going to be a click event, right? I'm gonna take the event variable over here, and for now I'm just gonna console log just to see what do we get in event.target. Let's see. So let me open the console. So if I click on this mobile, you're gonna see we get this tag. Let's just console log the event. If I click on this, you're gonna see we get this object. Inside this we have target, and inside the target we have a lot of options. So what we are looking for is the tag name. So the tag for this one is span, right? So we're gonna find if there's a span tag inside of over here, and we're not looking to just click on the div, which was our parent. So we have this tag name over here. So this is a span. Now, if I again go on over here and if I say B, bold tag, then you're gonna see if I click on it, this is going to display us a B tag over here, right? So this detects what kind of tag name that we are clicking on. If I click outside, this is going to give us a span, right? So now let's use this for our advantage. So if we go to script.js and below this, I'm just gonna remove this for now. And I'm gonna say if event.target.tag name is equals to span, then we're going to say window dot location dot href to be slash whatever the class name for that event was, right? So event dot target dot class name. Now, if we go and click on, let's say, headphone, you're going to see it routes us to this headphone page, which obviously doesn't exist. But now, you know, if I click on laptop, then it's going to take us to the laptop and so on. Now, you might be thinking, but in this case, we have this bold tag over here, right? If we click on it, nothing's going to happen because we are not clicking on the span. So the way to tackle it would be to use something called closest node. Let me just check this if I'm wrong. Yep, just like this. So if I go on and console log over here, event.target. So event.target.closest, and I'm going to provide it a span. So it's going to check if it has a close node with span tag. So I'm going to check for this, and if I click on it, we're going to get this span. So we can check for this condition as well. If it has a closed node called span, then we are also supposed to, you know, perform the action of sending it to slash mobile page. And yeah, as I mentioned, you may have seen me use this concept in multiple different videos as well. Like for example, in the first video of our machine coding interview series, when I used it on our single list component. So let me just show you this clip real quick.
I'm gonna add the event listener to each and every one of these buttons over here or span over here. So that's why I'm gonna use a concept over here called event delegation, which is also one of the most important interview questions. So if you use such good practices, the interviewer is going to appreciate your development skills a lot. So now inside of this, I'm going to say if e.target.tag name, and we are supposed to target the span, right? So I'm going to say if the tag name is span, span and the selected employee ID is not equal to e.target.id. So now obviously if it's span and it's not equal to the current employee ID, what I'm going to do, I'm going to initialize this variable with e.target.id so that is the selected employee currently.
Now, next question is an output based question, or you can say it's a follow up for our bubbling question. So here we have all of these 3 event listeners which are going to bubble from bottom to top, right? And now the question is that we are supposed to execute this in the following manner. Whenever we click on this button over here, the form event should be executed first, then the button event, and then the div event. And you know, this question was asked to me during my one of the first JavaScript interviews, and I had no idea how to do this. But then I went on and learned about event bubbling and event capturing, event propagation, etc. And then I got to know that we can simply add the capture true over here, which will result in only form to be doing the event capturing or trickling process, and all others will do the bubbling process. So if you think about it, when you click on button, obviously this button is enclosed inside of this form, right? But form is following this capture. So first it's gonna follow this top down approach. It's gonna execute this form event and then the button event, and then it's gonna perform the bubbling. So from bottom to top now. So this is been executed from top to bottom, and now bottom to top. So then it will execute this div event. So now if you click on this button, you're going to see it's going to execute form, then button, and then the div. So yeah, interviewers can ask you such tricky output based questions. So you have to be aware of all of these variations. Now, the next question is to create a modal which closes by clicking on negative space. So interviewer can give you such small components or apps to make during the interview, which is gonna use event delegation or event propagation concepts. When we create a modal, right? So when the modal is opened, we are supposed to click on the negative space, which is the space outside of the modal. And we have to make sure that when we are clicking on the negative space, only then the modal closes and not when we are clicking on the modal. So let me show you just quickly. If we create a modal over here, if we add an HTML with class modal button, a button which is going to trigger our modal, and our actual modal itself. And let me just add few styles, some basic styles, nothing fancy over here. I'm just gonna put our modal by default none. So if I put it flex, it's gonna look like this. So we're gonna have its open modal button, and when we click on it, a modal like this will be opened, and we are supposed to click on this space to close this modal, right? So we're supposed to only add our event listener in this outer space. But since this modal is inside of this space, so obviously when we click on this will also trigger the same event. So how do we tackle that? So if I go on script.js, I'm going to make it none first by default. And this modal container is this class over here where I've added all of these styles, and in the modal I've just given some basic height, width and background color. That's all. So in our script.js, I'm going to first target both our container and our button. So whenever we click on this button, we are supposed to show our modal, right? So let me add that functionality first. So button.add event listener of click. And over here, we're just going to toggle our modal. And obviously this function doesn't exist yet. So I'm going to create it. And I'm going to pass a value over here. So right now we're supposed to open the modal. I'm going to say true. And every time this happens, I'll say container dot style dot display. Oh, what's this? Style dot display to be flex. So only flex if this toggle is true. If it's false, then this is going to be none. That's all. Let's see. Let's try this out. If I click on open modal, yep, our modal will be opened. When we click on over here, then we're supposed to close it. So let's add that functionality. So inside of our container, so this is the place we are supposed to click, right? The container. So on the container, I'm going to add an event listener with the click event, add a callback over here. And simply I'm going to toggle modal and make it false. That's all. Let's see. If we open modal, click outside, it's closing, but when we click on over here as well, it's closing then too. So what do we do over here? When we open this, when we click on it, we are supposed to identify the class that we are clicking on. So we are supposed to only identify the modal container class, this class over here, and not this class, right? So if I say, I'm just going to console log this first, e.target dot class name. Let me take this event from here. I'm gonna open the console. If I click on over here, I click here, you're gonna see we get this modal class, but if you click on outside, we get this modal container class. So I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna say if e.target.class name is equals to modal container, only then we are supposed to execute this. So now if I open this and click on it, nothing happens, but when we click on negative space, it closes the modal. So you see, this is how the interviewer can give you such tricky questions that may involve using event delegation or event propagation concept. And another one of these examples can be creating a nav bar, which I think it's similar to that what we have already discussed. So you can go on and try this. Now, if you're preparing for your front-end interviews and you would like me to help you in your front-end interview preparation, click the link in the description down below and book a one-on-one call with me. We're going to discuss tips, tricks, I'm going to provide you roadmap and all of the useful resources which will help you in your preparation for your front-end interviews. So click the link in the description to book a call with me. And if you like this video, give this video a huge fat thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more such awesome interview videos.